Why did that guy at work finally get fired? Guy in the shipping department kept calling the shop manager a clown to his face and was warned to stop. The guy finally got fired when he decided to play circus music at full volume the next time the boss man came around. This is pretty funny though. The music was a nice touch. She messaged in the group chat we had 4 employees saying something along the lines of how she hates the job and she hoped the building burned down. Loved that girl. Had a very similar situation at my workplace. Was insulting the store manager as well, and apparently that's what tipped the scales. He was found sleeping under his desk. When awake he was caught repeatedly sneaking out the back door, no receptionist, and leaving for hours. He was taking credit for the work of others while trying to pawn his work off on the data entry girl. He worked there for 2.5 weeks. He put an ultrasound guided IV in a patient's artery instead of their vein. He wasn't signed off on performing that task yet and did it anyways. I worked with developmentally disabled adults. One employee was accused by a client, whom I've never seen angry before or since, of groping and staring at her naked body in the shower. This client didn't require any kind of supervision in the shower. The facility decided not to fire the employee, just move her to a different house. She was finally caught on camera sniffing clients' dirty underwear while doing laundry. No one was sad to see her go. I worked at a first-class business class lounge at an airport. Shift leader took pictures of me in the restroom and showed it to me laughing. He was given a stern talking to and a slap on the wrist by the general manager, and so I left the company. Heard from one of the co-workers that he got caught masturbating in the restroom and the general manager let him off with another warning. Turns out one of the big bosses of the company was the one that caught him during a personal trip and fired both the team leader and general manager. TLDR. Team leader and GM got fired for sexual harassment by a big boss after evading any type of repercussions. Good to hear they both got fired. Seen too many stories in this thread where the people that turned a blind eye and did nothing don't seem to have had any punishment. I'm a software engineer. My company hired a software architect who specialized in a different field. About a week after joining, he declared we need to restructure the whole software. So far so good, except the new structure was not clear to anyone but himself. He could not explain what was wrong with the existing structure. Now, software engineering is still engineering. There's some leeway, but ultimately there are right and wrong answers. Reasonably adept engineers should be able to communicate and convince each other of ideas, barring their egos. This guy, though, just sort of made up his own language. Like he'd tell you the software needs to be made of boondoggles connected to flimbusters, and you'd ask what he meant by flimbuster and he'd just launch into a long, 10 uninterrupted minutes explanation at the end of which you still had no idea. While this was going on, he was generally being annoying. Nothing earth-shattering, but he'd leave empty coffee cups on people's desks, would pull them in a brief discussion that would take up over an hour, badmouthed some of us to the rest of us, badmouthed some of us to upper management, generally sleazy stuff. It went on for 2 months. 2 months where we engineers genuinely couldn't figure out if the guy is a misunderstood genius or a scam artist, because nobody could figure out what he's on about, and he was extremely adamant about whatever it was, repeatedly bashing the existing architecture for being a dead end. It ended when one of us basically called him on his balls. Told management we can't figure out what to do here. Let's take all the time we need to make it concrete, and just spent entire days locked in a room with him and management, slowly forcing him to go into details. The endgame was for Mr. Architect to write a document explaining in full detail what needs to be done. He had 2 weeks. He didn't show up to work after they passed, and the document he left behind was just the chapter headings. I think we dodged a bullet, but the story is so crazy I don't think I'll ever be free of the doubt that maybe he really had a good idea I was too dumb to comprehend. Sounds like he was trying to take over the place by redesigning things in a way only he understands, so he becomes unfireable. Got caught vaping in a clean room with hydrofluoric acid, butanol, and a salt bath with a temperature of 500 degrees Celsius near him. Guy always got to work high, as in, couldn't function high. We worked at a grocery store, so the work wasn't hard but we tried extra days of training anyway. Guy said the job was too difficult and that he was going to quit. We tried to convince him not to, but left him alone after that. About a week later, we have a picture of him in the office on the do not serve wall. Turns out he sent a letter to management threatening their safety and had a no trespass and no contact order for the premises. This guy Sharky continually came to work late, civil construction site, and then went out, got drunk and crapped the bed. He then tried to wash an electric blanket in the washing machine. This all happened in the share house that my company pays for. People like this are building your bridges and roads. My electric blanket is machine washable. I mean, the rest of it is reprehensible, but maybe the blanket part isn't as bad as it sounds. He missed a major deadline and didn't tell anyone and didn't show up to work to face the music. Then they found out he was assigning some of his work to another co-worker but turning it in and saying he did it. Then they tried to fire him but he didn't show up for 3 days. They basically drove to his house to fire him. Watching pee on company computers and came to work high all the time. Also was an hour or two late every day. Guy lasted 1 week. I honestly thought this only existed in movies. I didn't realize there are actually people out there stupid enough to do this. A customer finally made a complaint about a sexual comment he made. Backstory: this guy was super weird with women, got really depressed a lot and would talk about being alone forever often, despite being 24. When he was in a good mood though, he would apparently be hitting on customers as a cashier at a fast casual restaurant. He's done some pretty creepy things towards women from the stories he's told me. The kicker was when a customer pointed to a picture on the menu and said that looks delicious, to which he said not as delicious as you must be. She phoned in and he was fired. Sounds like someone I used to be friends with. Nice looking guy, nothing special, but still a nice looking guy. He couldn't figure out that the reason he couldn't get and keep a girlfriend was because he had such a crappy personality. I finally had to tell him that The Handmaid's Tale was not a how-to guide for dealing with women. We're no longer friends. 55-year-old slovenly pervert. Imagine the stereotypical neckbeard with a few more under his gut-covered belt. Walked up to a 17-year-old female employee, grabbed her face in both his hands and told her, "I want to teach you how to please a man." Security escorted him out of the building 20 minutes later. Do you think he came up with that on the spot, or something he'd been practicing for weeks in advance, like someone online told him that'd get him laid with certainty? You are not fired from the military, it's more like fricked up the rest of your life. In Idaho, he got caught smoking pot in 4-man berthing on base, and in the subsequent investigation was also on M, said the pot was to help him sleep after the M, and found out he had run up and defaulted on $10,000 of charges to his official use-only credit card. All of this 4 months out of boot camp. Was told you can't smoke pot on the job site. Was told that whatever he does off the clock, like during lunch, they would look the other way. He told them he needed to smoke at all times to deal with his anxiety. I was the one to recommend him for the position. He called in one night an hour before his shift because he had an ingrown hair on his stomach. The week after that he missed 2 days because he said his dad fell off the roof. What clinched it was he waited until we were slammed and went to the bathroom for the entire dinner rush. We found out a few weeks after he was fired that his dad hadn't fallen off the roof and he'd used that excuse at 3 other jobs. I saw him a few months after that hitchhiking on the road out of town and was obviously on some really harsh drugs. I'm guessing M. The repeated daddy roof fallings drove him to the M, he swears. When he first got hired, he had an ankle monitor. He backed into a customer's vehicle 3 times. He missed work several times from being too hungover. He was a jackbutt a lot. He got pulled over because he drifted around a corner and it turned out he didn't legally have a license and got taken to court. He had gotten 3 DUIs and got arrested twice in 1 week. The second time he was fired, my employers finally decided not to bring him back. The second time he was fired. Oh, come on. I work at a high volume brew pub and we had this manager bartender who was completely nuts. She was crazy manipulative, threatened and physically assaulted multiple employees and constantly stole from the company. She was definitely medicated, and when she drank she would act even more insane and go on tangents half to herself, so you weren't quite sure if she was talking to you or not. One night she had a few drinks after work and choked out a hostess and popped a squat on our patio while guests were dining. Like legit pulled her pants down and started pee next to a table of people who were eating dinner. She was fired and banned from the premises the next day. I had a very similar colleague at a pub. Hasn't ever been fired to the best of my knowledge. I left. It was this crazy Turkish lady who told my friend Kieran he had the heart of the devil and he's going to heck for making a small mistake. And she lost 2 months worth of my tips while I found out she was making 5x what everyone else was. Way back in the day before internet at home was common. Printed some pee at work, but accidentally chose a printer locked inside a female co-worker's office. Hospital tech was working third shift. He was using an out-of-view work computer to view pee. He had been doing this for about a month before he got caught. He was caught because one of the sites had infected the computer. When the decidedly female chief mammography tech started the computer in front of a patient in the mammography room, the screen started filling up with pop-up pee ads. When the investigation was done, the listing of all the sites he visited during his misadventure used up nearly a ream of paper. I'm trying to use this mammogram, but I just keep getting pictures of tea. We had someone that was impossible to work with, largely because he couldn't listen or comprehend what others are saying. This isn't a language issue. He just literally could not comprehend what he was being told. He was so self-involved that it was impossible to get him to stop and listen to someone else. I was led over him for a project briefly simply because the project was going sideways. My way of dealing with him was to not assign any tasks to him that actually had to be done. I would assign him bugs we had already decided not to fix, and then refuse to help him. His favorite thing to do was ask for help, then argue, refuse to listen, and try to make the conversation take as long as possible, keeping the other person from doing their job. In the end, he got put on a PIP. He argued with our boss about it, all the while not comprehending what it meant, then left his office and went to the office of the next person up, who obviously knew of the PIP, and proceeded to argue with him. The great part was that the PIP was about comprehension and listening skills, and he completely failed to listen to this boss as well and was fired on the spot. He then kept saying he would go get his stuff from his desk and could not understand what they meant when he was told he could not go back to his desk and that they would ship him his personal possessions. He just kept repeating that he had to go back to his desk to get his stuff. Sounds like undiagnosed cognitive disability. I work at a large manufacturing plant. About once a week, a dude and his team leader accomplice would come to work before their shift, clock in, hide out in the locker room for 20 minutes during shift change, walk back out the gate and drive to a different job where the two would work for 8 hours. Then the accomplice would go in the system and put in a clock out time, making it look like they just forgot to swipe their badges on the way out, getting paid over $20 an hour while not even at the place. Due to absolutely terrible supervision at the plant on off shifts, it surprisingly took months before they got caught red-handed, fired, and a nasty lawsuit for fraud. There are plenty other stories, but that's the ballsiest on the part of the person getting fired that I can think of. Years back I worked in a gym briefly. The guy I replaced had been fired for getting caught having sex in the gym bathroom with a member during office hours. Idiot. For months after he left, I would have hot blondes coming into the office to complain that payments were coming out of their accounts. He had been selling memberships by telling hot chicks they could have free memberships. He would complete the sale, take the commission, and cancel payments each month. Except when he left, his plan fell apart because he wasn't there to cancel the girls' payments anymore. LA Fitness would have loved him, since they try to make it as hard as possible to cancel. You just can't show up and cancel a membership. You need an envelope and stamp to do it. At least this is how it was a few years back. Delivered pizzas for us for about 4 months without car insurance. Finally got caught after rear-ending someone on a delivery and paying him $200 cash to not report it. Told us he hit a wall. Might have gotten away with it if he didn't make a Facebook post about it the next day. Got drunk while working the bar, took his shirt off, and made out with a guy who was sitting at the bar. Fine dining restaurant. I saw this happen with a server working a $20,000 wedding buyout. He and that one girl who is drunk by the time the dance starts found each other, and by the second song were making out on the empty dance floor. Dude ended up unemployed. Girl went home with her unhappy, really drunk but not as drunk husband. We all made extra in tips. Kept falling asleep. We work in an open pit coal mine. The primary job is driving a 320-ton dump truck. Now everyone gets tired. We work 2 12-hour days, then 2 12-hour nights. Nearly everyone who's ever worked there has fallen asleep at the shovel or on break. We generally fess up to it, take the slap on the wrist, and move on. This guy would insist he was blacking out, then claim he was fine to keep driving. He brought a doctor's note saying he was fine, but the company sent him to their doctor and they called bulls. Allegedly, last I heard, he was told to pick up his stuff. Though he's still making sickness and ailment pay, he's not allowed to work on the site. We worked in a hospital lab, and he mentioned several times how easy it would be to bring firearms to work and get rid of some annoying co-workers. It was all, haha, just kidding, but luckily the higher-ups took it seriously. Poked holes in the cups so when we filled them up they would pour right onto the customers. Had anger problems. Not his fault, but probably not the best quality for a fast food employee. Was lazy. Showed up late a lot. Would purposefully mess up orders and get people the wrong drinks. And wouldn't stay clean shaven. We had a pretty strict rule on having no facial hair. The last straw was that one day he didn't show up at all. When the director called him to ask why he didn't show up, all he said was, "Yeah, I just didn't feel like showing." My director then informed him that didn't need to show up ever again. No was sad or surprised to see him go. Was working pizza and the GM hired a new driver, overall a decent guy, maybe a little slow at times, and doesn't seem to be picking up on simple things like how to do prep. About 2 months after he started, I'm the closing manager and I get a call at about 9 PM. It's the new driver saying he couldn't find the address the customer had given him. The only problem being I didn't know he was working that night, so I asked him what he's talking about. He was the opening driver. He had taken a delivery at about 2:30 PM just before I had gotten there, and when he looked up the address in his phone it told him that the address was for a place on the north end of Dallas. The pizza place was in Austin. This dumb butt had driven 6 hours there, then spent another hour trying to find a place that didn't exist. The next day the GM asked me to cover his shifts for the rest of the week as he was fired for an inability to perform essential job functions. I am somewhat impressed. That is a dedicated type of stupid. I worked at a cheese factory in a small town. During the off-season there was not a lot of work to be done around the place except for maintenance and housekeeping stuff. Our stores guy would go missing on an almost daily basis and only appear an hour or two before knock-off. He would usually say that he had just popped out for lunch or that he was working on something at the back of our site. Management couldn't prove he was skipping out on work, though, and when we were on production, he was generally good at his job. So they largely turned a blind eye. Where he fricked up, though, was when there was a local go-kart competition. He skipped out after lunch and competed in the main race, placing second. It got published in the local paper the following week and the manager read it while having his morning coffee. He went over and congratulated him on the result while handing him a suspension notice. HR terminated him the next day. Kicking a possum. We get a 15-minute break at 10 AM and 3 PM. At 10 o'clock break, this guy who hadn't worked there more than a couple of months walked out to the parking lot where he removed a cage trap containing a possum from the bed of his truck. He then opened the cage and shook the possum out onto the ground where it sat dazed and likely heat exhausted. The guy puts the trap back in his truck, then realizes the possum is still there, so he kicks the crap out of it, breaking its back to where it couldn't move if it wanted to. Then the sob just walks back inside, leaving the possum lying in the parking lot. Poor possum. Two classics from the same company. Employee A was a big dude, 6 feet 5 inches and not skinny, a crazy close talker. When he got upset, he got even closer. There were times he would be inches from someone's face. He was a contractor, so we let him go. When we checked his computer after he was escorted out, we found out he had been cruising dating sites and bomb-making websites. That HD went off to the FBI. We gave him the nickname the Lovelorn Unabomber. Employee B was just bad. He was brought in as a senior computer guy, but knew nothing. He would get halfway into something and just stop, then blamed everyone else. He had to work out at lunch, taking 2 hours to do so. Important meeting? Nope. Have to work out. What got him shit-canned was ski season. Our office was about 45 minutes from reasonably good skiing. About once a week, he would concoct some BS story about having to be in after lunch. At a meeting, in front of managers, I asked him how skiing that morning was. He turned bright red and said, it was okay. He was gone soon after. He ended up copying and pasting entire sections of other people's LinkedIn profiles to use as his own. The kid whose job included changing the folio, which is the line on each newspaper page with the page number and today's date. He was fired on August 33rd. Came to work drunk, like completely and utterly wasted. Was a radio DJ. It's bad enough to come to work drunk if you're not a radio DJ. It's extra bad to come to work drunk if you are a radio DJ. On your family friendly and the Canadian equivalent of the Bible Belt. Believe it or not, his career recovered. Nice dude who made a mistake. Almost didn't want to share this one because of that, but it's too good not to share. I almost feel like I know that guy, or it's more common than I thought. Same story. Was a radio DJ in my town and part-time terrible stand-up comic. Always getting suspended or fired and bounced out to Saskatchewan somewhere, then somehow ended up back here where he started. Still drunk though, but claims he's getting help. It doesn't seem to be working. I told the manager that if he didn't put a stop to the cook touching me and calling me everything but my name, I was going to file a harassment suit. Every time this cook touched me, I loudly stated, don't freaking touch me. When he called me babe, I'm not your babe. My name is Harper Fulcati. Everyone in the place knew how I felt. There is no way he thought I was joking or flirting. After a few months, it only had escalated and I had had enough. Turns out one server who shows up on time and leaves her personal life at home is worth more than a good cook who turns up late and causes drama. Finally, justice for the fop. I was called a wuss and that I didn't get it when I complained about the kitchen being freaking vulgar and annoying to the women working. I stopped working service industry years ago because of it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.